Hello and welcome back to another reading. Third part of Talking to the Wild today. I thought we would do it as a little relaxing, calming reading by lighting a candle. We're on to our third part of Talking to the Wild today. And our third part is called Found. Where we're coming back to ourselves after getting lost in part 2. So Part 3, Found. Do not become the thing you loathe. As children, we're convinced that monsters hide beneath our beds, but as adults, we soon realise that they walk the streets instead. It's not their face that's monstrous, it's their loathing and their lies, for it's not about the way they look, it's who they are inside. They roar a song of malice, manipulation, power, greed, and they feast upon our silence, thinking we admit defeat. And at first, we tiptoe round them, terrified to make a noise. But slowly, very surely, we are bound to find our voice. Then as fear gives way to anger, and as our loathing multiplies, we start becoming monstrous, and we think we're justified. But flames won't put out fire. Water will not halt a flood, and we cannot stop the monsters by behaving as they would, because anyone who's ever loved somebody else before knows, no matter how much hate we feel, love always matters more. So though you're brave to fight them, and your courage makes you tough, don't fight them out of hate, but to protect the things you love. And when life gets too scary, promise me you'll make sure that you won't become a monster, but you'll still learn how to roar. If your best argument is the other side's weaknesses, what does that say about your strengths? The sand and the snow. One year, in late December, the desert met the snow, and she had to shield her eyes against the glistening pure white glow. The sight unnerved her greatly as her breath caught on the air, for she had never seen a girl like this, with snowflakes in her hair. She felt a little threatened, for how could they both exist? How could there be the room on earth for total opposites? So she told Snow she was far too cold and hard to walk upon, and that friends would lose their fingers if they sat with her too long. But Snow said not to worry, for her friends all came prepared, as she made sure they all knew the gloves and coats and boots to wear. Yet Sand said they'd still perish in the blizzards and the storms, for amidst the freezing temperatures no coat could keep them warm. So Snow showed her a shelter that was freezing cold to touch, but inside it gave protection when the weather got too much. Sand argued it was bleak here, and so stark and ugly too, she could scarcely feel the sunshine in the sky of icy blue. Then Snow walked up the mountain, with Sand following behind, and she radiated beauty as the sun began to rise. And Sand just kept on talking, till there were no more words to say, until all her criticisms had been melted clean away. See, Snow had rightly proved herself, and proud and tall she'd stand, for she'd done it without saying a single word against the sand. Do not be afraid of your tears. The dam. She'd built herself a dam so she could hold her tears at bay, a wall of stubborn barricade to keep the pain away. Her barriers were busyness, distraction and denial, and ignoring and avoiding's how she coped for quite a while. But the trouble was, her dam left nowhere for her pain to go, so it sat behind her wall with nothing left to do but grow. The tightening in her chest began constricting every breath, and to battle every painful thought took every ounce of strength. The lump inside her throat got slightly bigger every day, and before too long she found she couldn't blink her tears away. So the pressure kept on building, and the dam began to crack, and it soon became impossible to hold the water back, so she let the dam burst open. And as she felt the water flow, she realised sometimes all we need is just to let it go. Butterfly kisses are my favourite, so gentle and intimate. The butterfly. Trade me a memory, the butterfly said, a memory that's heavy and harsh, and I'll sit and I'll listen and try my sweet best to lighten the load on your heart. So he told her of struggles, of heartache and pain, and he cried as he spoke them aloud, for it wasn't one memory, but lots of the same that were all of them weighing him down. He spoke of a place filled with darkness and fear, a tunnel devoid of all hope. Then the spots on her wings deftly captured his tears, and softly and gently she spoke. Thanks for the memories, she said with a smile. Then she gave him a butterfly kiss. Then she drew a deep breath as she wistfully sighed, and then traded her memory for his. I've always been me, but not always like this. There was once when I thought I had died. I was shrouded in darkness till I grew my wings. See, I needed that darkness to fly. People will never forget how you treated them. The fall. He clambers up his ladder, made from them and him and her, and he tramples on their faces like he's trampling through some dirt. Then he sits atop his tower and ignores their cries for help, for he now no longer needs them and he's happy by himself. He sits consumed by ego, by his hierarchy and power, whilst his ladder help each other to ascend a different tower. But one day comes a dragon breathing flames of fiery green, and the man atop the tower knows that he must quickly leave, so he calls out to his ladder. But they all decline the call, and as his tower slowly crumbles, they sit back and watch him fall. Never forgotten, always loved. Wave of light. The others lit their candles for the ones who couldn't be, for the memories of the angels who would now forever sleep. She tried to light the matches, but they snapped within her hand, and he took her hands in his to show that he could understand. They sat there for a moment as the candle sat in wait. Then he struck a match and lit it, and they gazed upon the flame, but the light that flickered brightly almost burned their eyes at once, and the flames that licked against their skin were hurting far too much. The shadows from the candle brought an overwhelm of pain, for the heartbeats and the movements and the pictures blurry grey, so they breathed the heat and fire in, then blew it out to smoke, and as the candle settled then, they held each other close. And whilst others lit their candles, they chose not to take their part, but it didn't dim the flame of love that burned within their hearts. Some things can be light as a feather in your arms, but heavy in your heart. Baggage. She opens up her suitcase, and it's loaded to the brim. She simply doesn't have the room to squeeze more baggage in. That holdall's filled with years and years of things she has endured, but you think she has no holdall, for she acts all self-assured. But just because she's confident and acts like she's all right, it doesn't mean her baggage is inconsequentially light, because though her life looks rosy, it doesn't mean to say that she doesn't carry burdens that will weigh her down each day. She's fought off many monsters, often swam up from the depths. She's walked through many fires and pulled herself back from the edge, so never think she walks on air, when she's actually walked through hell. You just don't know her load is heavy, because she carries it so well. Silence has a lot to answer for. It was the Sunday market, and as I wandered down the aisles, an older woman weaving made me stop and watch a while. She wove a little blanket, but the thread she used was odd, for it wasn't wool or yarn she used, but words pulled from a pot. She threaded up her needle with a string of I love you, and she wove them into help me, braided with I miss you too. Then no, 100 times rose from her pot a silver thread, and I saw that she had named her stall Blankets of Regret. And as I stood and watched her then, I saw I love you fade, and help me slowly disappeared, and no began to wane. Her words had now become a quilt of pale translucency, and I asked if I could hold this thing that I could barely see. I expected light and air, but it lay heavy in my hands, and I had to ask about it, for I had to understand. So I asked, "What are you weaving?" And she told me, "Every day I weave the silence left by words we're too afraid to say." Be the lifeboat in somebody's storm. The storm. She'd been aboard her boat now, in a storm that raged for weeks, when she caught sight of 2 people who were lost and all at sea. One looked all exhausted as he swam against the tide, and the other gasped for every breath, just trying to survive. She looked on in confusion, for they must have had a boat, so now why were they without it? And she called out to them both, "You should have kept yourselves aboard and not abandoned ship. You should have worn a life jacket and better learnt to swim." And in between their fight for life, they tried hard to explain that their boat had been destroyed by bolts of lightning, wind and rain. But she barely heard their reason, for while she sat safe and dry, she'd failed to see how hard they'd worked to keep themselves alive. Then as she watched them suddenly engulfed by violent waves, her fortune and her privilege engulfed her just the same. She realised quite uncomfortably that she was still afloat only since she had been lucky to avoid a damaged boat. So instead of blaming, shouting at them, telling them to swim, she threw them both the lifeline and she pulled them safely in. Then not much later afterward, the sky became less grey and the waves grew ever calmer, and they heard the thunder fade, and she realised, as she sat there and they watched the storm die down, that it felt far better helping than if she had watched them drown. Heart, Earth. Mother Earth. She's mountains and she's sunshine. She's the moon, silvery bright. She's the clouds and wind and rain, and she's the dancing northern lights. She is deserts and savannas. She's the waves that fill the sea. She is birdsong and she's flowers. She's the blossom on the trees. And if you treat her fairly, she will let the sun shine through. She will kiss you with a gentle breeze and paint the sky in blue. She'll rain if you are thirsty, then she'll blow the clouds away, and she'll decorate with rainbows while she calms the ocean waves. But if you treat her badly, she will breathe out stormy skies. She will summon up tornadoes and antagonise the tides. She'll throw things from the mountain in an avalanche of snow, and she'll blaze and burn the forest so the trees no longer grow. She'll treat you as you treat her, so be careful what you choose. For she's power you can't comprehend, and much she stands to lose, so treat her with the kindness and respect that she deserves. 'Cause if you rearrange her heart, you'll see it holds the earth. The world is always darker at night. 4 a.m. I met with 4 a.m. last night. She said to say hello. She said she's seen a lot of you since several weeks ago. She said she hears your worries while you're lying there awake, but she'd rather watch you sleeping with a smile upon your face. So she's gathered up your worries, and she feeds them to the stars, and they swallow them with fire till they're left with only half. Then they whisper to the sun, as she begins her morning climb, and the sunshine takes your worries and accepts them every time. She chops them into pieces till she's left with merely grains, then she throws them to the clouds so they can gently fall as rain. And the sunlight then transforms your drops of worry into hope, so that rainbow that you see, that's 4 a.m. saying hello. Hope is every colour under the sun. Hope. He stood and faced his canvas, and he opened up his tin, but the tin lay bare and empty, for it had no colours in. His paintbrush hovered ready, but he had nothing to paint, for the world felt tired and weary, and the skies were dark and grey. But then a little robin chose his palm on which to land, and his paintbrush stroked its red chest as it rested on his hand. Then he found a tiny fire, and his paintbrush stirred the flames, for the sparks of dancing orange were the perfect fiery shade. He looked up at the sun and felt its warmth against his skin, whilst drops of molten yellow started pooling in his tin. He walked into the forest, and once there he found a tree, and his paintbrush took green samples from its many different leaves. He lassoed all the clouds to leave a sky of flawless blue, and swirled his paintbrush through the air, collecting all its hues. He sailed out to the ocean, where it's wide and vast and deep, and his brush created ripples in the indigo blue sea. He headed to his garden, where the world was warm and quiet, and he found the perfect purple on the petals of a violet. He put what he'd collected all together in a pot, and he mixed till he was happy with the colours that he got. Then he stood up to his canvas, to the air his paintbrush went, painting ribbons of bright colours mixed from tones that nature sent, and his colours waved their banners, with their message soaring high, for he'd painted hope with rainbows, and he'd draped them across the sky. Growing through it. Growth. There's a tree that I've been watching, and I see it in my dreams, for it calls to me and whispers as its leaves blow in the breeze. It whispers of a struggle, from the roots up through the trunk, and from there it tells of healing grown from nurture, care and love. And here emerge the many branches, stretching far and wide, growing, blooming, blossoming, and reaching for the sky. And as these blossoms open up, encouraged by the sun, I take a step back from the tree and see it all as one. I see it tells a story of a journey over time, and I realise it's my story, and the journey all is mine. I've reached the upper branches, but the trunk stands strong below, for it's all the love and healing that's enabled me to grow. And though the roots are hidden and now shrouded from the light, I know for sure without them I'd have never climbed so high. So now when I am doubtful and become unsure of me, I'll close my eyes and listen to the whispers of that tree. You'll find that sooner or later there are bridges you no longer need to cross. Burning bridges. She stood upon her bridge and watched the water flow beneath, and a voice inside her head explained that life was like this stream. It told her certain things in life are never meant to last, that their destinies to flow towards the ocean of our past. It said that clinging on to these would tire and exhaust her, that the current meant she'd fight a losing battle with the water. But then she told the voice of times the stream had quenched her thirst, or had cooled her in the summer heat and carried things to her. The voice said yes, that there were times the stream had cooled and quenched, but there were also times it flooded her and left her drowned and drenched. She knew the voice was right, and that she had to let it go, that she'd spent so long upon her bridge watching the stream below. So the voice produced a box, and clean against it struck a match. Then she watched it spark to life and saw the tiny fire dance. And as the dance grew brighter then, she tossed it to the ground, and as she bid a bittersweet farewell, she watched her bridge burn down. A heart full of fire. Fire. Do not go near the flames, he said. Beware the sparks and heat. Be careful of the white-hot ash that burns beneath your feet. Fret not, she said. Come closer as these flames grow ever higher, and you'll see I have nothing to fear, for I'm the whole damn fire.